Coming up on a newscast, Chinese and Russian warplanes flew over South Korea's air defense identification zone. This prompted the nation's Joint Chiefs of Staff to scramble fighters. Khartoum is inscribed onto a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage list. The Korean mass dance drama's edition increased the number of South Korean entries on that list to 22. Jiang Zemin, who led China during a period of rapid economic growth in the 90s, has passed. State media reported he was suffering from leukemia and multiple organ failure. Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. 8 warplanes from China and Russia entered South Korea's air defense identification zone early Wednesday. Although none of them violated the country's airspace, the military scrambled its own fighters. Bae Eun-ji starts us off.
At 5:48 a.m. on Wednesday, 2 H-6 bombers from China entered South Korea's air defense zone, also known as CADIS. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff said they entered 126 kilometers northwest of Yeodo, a submerged rock located south of Jeju Island. The Chinese warplanes stayed within the zone for about 25 minutes before moving away. Then about an hour later at 6:44 a.m., they entered the zone again, this time from the northeast of South Korea's southeastern coastal city of Pohang, before flying away about 20 minutes later. A few hours after that, at 12:18 p.m., 8 warplanes violated the zone. This included 2 Chinese bombers from before, along with 6 Russian warplanes, including 4 Tu-95 bombers and 2 Su-35 fighter jets. They entered 200 kilometers northeast of Ulleungdo and flew toward Dokdo Island before eventually making their way out of the CADIS zone about 20 minutes later. None of the aircraft violated the country's airspace. In response, South Korea deployed multiple fighter jets, including its F-15Ks, but the JCS did not elaborate on the exact number of aircraft. South Korea's military said the country's fighter jets were ready even before the Chinese and Russian warplanes entered South Korea's air defense zone in case of an emergency. An official from the JCS noted that China and Russia appeared to have been holding their combined aerial exercise. China reportedly told South Korea through their military hotline that it was just an ordinary drill. The two countries last held air drills together about 6 months ago in May, and both Russian and Chinese warplanes entered South Korea's air defense zone on that occasion as well. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
The U.S. Department of Defense believes China currently has over 400 nuclear warheads, and that number is expected to jump about 3 times over a decade, driven by modernization and expansion of its nuclear forces. Kim Dami provides a deeper analysis.
China will likely own a stockpile of 1,500 nuclear warheads by 2035 if its nuclear development continues at the current pace. That's almost quadruple what Beijing is known to have currently. This is according to a report by the Pentagon released on Tuesday, which says that China has continued to speed up the modernization, diversification, and expansion of its nuclear weapons. The latest figure reflects mounting concerns by Washington over China's intentions to stretch out its nuclear arsenal, such as by ordering the Northern Theater Command to engage in a range of operations in the event of a crisis. That could include, according to the Pentagon, a military intervention into North Korea to secure weapons of mass destruction or preserve North Korea as a buffer state.
China is trying to help this North Korean regime and not to collapse, and then in that sense also to have the WMDs, one of the most important agendas to bring the stability for the North Korean regime.
In fact, the number of nuclear warheads China is expected to acquire over the years could be bigger than the Pentagon expects. The expert added it could match or exceed Washington's, which is 3,750. While seeing no imminent invasion of Taiwan, the Pentagon voiced concern that China could conduct air or ground attack operations against Taiwan. China is known to spend the most money on defense in the world, followed by the U.S., but Tuesday's report pointed out that spending is much bigger, with several categories not officially included in the defense budget. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
The U.S. Space Command is working to improve its missile warning system to quickly detect North Korean missile launches. The upgrades are expected to benefit not just America, but its allies as well. Ms. Kyun provides a glimpse of what to expect.
The commander of U.S. Space Command, General James Dickinson, said Washington is working to improve its missile warning system. Speaking at an event on Tuesday, General Dickinson noted that the U.S. was looking to integrate sensor architecture that gives it as much warning as possible of any type of missile activity from North Korea. By doing so, he said this would provide the U.S. and its allies with advanced warning.
And we're looking at how we can look at the sensors that we have today in the Department of Defense, integrate those into an architecture where we can provide, both the United States and our allies and partners as much advanced warning as possible.
He also added that the Space Command was looking at how to incorporate commercial satellites to provide such missile warnings. His remarks come after a recent series of North Korean missile provocations. Starting this year, North Korea has launched 63 ballistic missiles, more than double its previous annual record of 25. Amid escalating provocations, the U.S. Space Force set up its first regional component command at the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command last week, a move apparently aimed at enhancing its missile defense capabilities in the region. Min Suk-hyun, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense industry has been growing fast in recent years. One area primed for more growth is unmanned ground vehicles. Hanwha Aerospace demonstrated its own UGV to American forces. Lee Seung-jae takes us closer to the action.
This is the Arion-SMET unmanned ground vehicle produced by South Korea's Hanwha Aerospace. On a single charge, the UGV can cruise for more than 100 kilometers and is able to avoid different obstacles along the way. It tracks enemy movement in real time and automatically turns its muzzle once it hears gunshots or other weapons. The weapon embedded in the UGV can rotate 360 degrees and can fire up to 200 rounds. All of these features were demonstrated for the first time at the U.S. Army garrison, Camp Humphreys in South Korea on Tuesday. During the showcase of the Arion-SMET, the vehicle proved a variety of unmanned technologies to support infantry troops on the battlefield, such as remote-controlled and autonomous driving, both on paved and unpaved roads, obstacle avoidance, gunshot source localization, and more. It was also the first time the U.S. has inspected the performance of Korean weapons at the USFK base in Pyeongtaek, with the commander of the 8th U.S. Army and others directly participating. All this could provide a further boost to South Korea's arms exports.
The U.S. military is running a similar vehicle business, but one supplier cannot satisfy all consumers. If there is something lacking there, I think there is a possibility for us.
Hanwha Aerospace added the Arion-SMET has already proved its outstanding mission capabilities during a ROK Army trial earlier this year in a program to test the performance of weapon systems for overseas exports. In October, the South Korean UGV was chosen as one piece of military ground equipment to be tested by the U.S. military under a functional test program aimed at assessing matured foreign technologies that can fill U.S. forces' existing capability gaps. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The U.S. is voicing support for the right of people in China to protest their government's zero-COVID policy. Those demonstrations have led to an unknown number of arrests. The IMF is also recommending that Beijing change as the strict measures impact both the people and the global economy. Han Sung-woo has the full story.
United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has reiterated his support for the ongoing protests in China against the country's strict zero-COVID policy.
When it comes to protests that we're seeing in China, protests that we're seeing for different reasons in Iran, in other places, our position is the same everywhere, which is that we support the right of people everywhere to peacefully protest, to make known their views, their concerns, and their frustrations.
The head of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, meanwhile, voiced her concerns regarding the negative effects China's antivirus curbs are inflicting on the world economy.
We have been recommending for some time now a recalibration of China's zero-COVID policy, exactly because of the impact it has both on people and on the economy.
A deadly fire last Thursday in Urumqi, the capital of the far western region of Xinjiang, killed at least 10 people in an apartment building, igniting protests nationwide after videos appeared to show lockdowns, delaying firefighters from reaching victims in time. CNN reports the local government said it would gradually lift the measures without providing a clear time frame. Protesters holding symbolic blank sheets of paper have even demanded Chinese President Xi Jinping step down after having overseen the nation's virus prevention scheme for 3 years. While demonstrations in many areas have dispersed peacefully, other protesters have reportedly met stronger responses from Chinese police forces. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Jiang Zemin, who led China during times of rapid economic growth in the 1990s, has died. He was 96. State media reported that he died in Shanghai on Wednesday as he was suffering from leukemia and multiple organ failure. The Chinese Communist Party released a statement saying he was recognized as an outstanding leader with high prestige. Jiang rose to power after a 1989 military crackdown on protesters in Tiananmen Square, which he led when then-leader Deng Xiaoping handpicked Jiang as his successor. During his 10-year reign from 1993, Jiang oversaw the peaceful handover of Hong Kong in 1997 and China's entry into the WTO in 2001. Talchum is added to UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. The traditional Korean mass dance made the cut following a recommendation from its evaluation body early this month. Talchum combines dance with storytelling and has their characteristics of both performing arts and drama. Now South Korea has 22 items listed as UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage. Among the latest are Shirim, or traditional Korean wrestling, inscribed in 2018 following joint efforts by Seoul and Pyongyang. Not to mention the Lantern Lighting Festival held every spring to celebrate Buddha's birthday. The government is striking truck drivers continue to log horns. The union wants the system that guarantees basic rate for their services be permanent, but with no deal yet, officials again warn of legal consequences. Lee Kyung-eun has the latest.
Unionized truckers in South Korea continued their strike for a 7th day, defying the return-to-work order signed by President Yoon Suk-yeol the day before. It was the first order of its kind to be issued since the executive order system was formulated 18 years ago. In protest, some leaders of the cargo truckers' solidarity shaved their heads. The government order applies to 2,500 truckers nationwide. Among the first to be served with the order were those in the cement industry. The government once again has urged them to go back to work and warned of the legal consequences that could follow if they don't.
If cement truckers don't return to work without a legitimate reason, they will face sanctions as stipulated by the law.
Those legal measures include a suspension of their business license, 3 years in prison, or fines of up to 30 million won, roughly $23,000. But the truckers' union says the government's response has been unconstitutional. Transport truckers are mostly self-employed owner-operators who've bought their own trucks, some costing as much as $200,000. So they say suspending their business license for refusing to work is a violation of their right to make a living, a basic right guaranteed by the Constitution. The truckers' union is considering filing an injunction in court to stop the order. But Land Minister Won Yu-ryong has warned that yet more return-to-work orders could be issued for other industries, including steel and petrochemicals. So there's no breakthrough in sight. The second round of negotiations between the truckers and the government on Wednesday broke down in just 40 minutes. The truckers are demanding the government expand and make permanent the system of cargo rates that are based on operating costs to guarantee them a minimum rate of pay. The government recently decided to extend the system for just 3 years. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Staying with the ongoing truckers' strike, various industries are adversely impacted by the demonstration as it disrupts the supply of materials like cement and steel. Lee Dae-hyun tells us more.
The cargo truckers' strike entered its 7th day on Wednesday. Drivers rejecting pickups nationwide is causing major disruption. The Land Ministry said 12 major ports are seeing container movement drop to 37% of the average volume. One of the major concerns is cement. Some cement factories and logistics centers have had to stop shipments. Due to this, the Korea Cement Association says they're seeing losses of about $13 million a day. Automobile companies are seeing losses of around $302,000 a day as employees are having to actually drive finished vehicles to shipping centers themselves one by one instead of them being taken on transporters. The steel industry, too, says it has been unable to ship 600,000 tons of products since last Tuesday. Their losses are at around $604 million. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy also reported that there are at least 20 gas stations nationwide as of Wednesday where gasoline is sold out.
The amount of fuel that's being transported has dropped compared to before. We are monitoring stock levels at each gas station so that we can distribute what we have left effectively to prevent shortages.
And the impact is even being felt by consumers. Tech giants like Samsung Electronics and LG are notifying consumers who buy large-sized home appliances like refrigerators and TVs of delivery setbacks. It's also affecting consumers who have ordered products from overseas as freight shipments are being delayed as well. Meanwhile, the labor union of Seoul Metro 2 has also started to go on strike on Wednesday for the first time in 6 years, demanding a withdrawal of a plan to downsize the workforce. Seoul City is aiming to reduce traffic chaos by mobilizing additional personnel and buses. But more economic damage is expected as Korea Railroad Corporation is also scheduled to go on strike in a few days as well. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
The economy showing more signs of slowing down. South Korea's industrial output was dipped to new lows since the start of the pandemic. Retail sales fell for the second straight month amid slowing exports. Jiang helps us look beyond the digits.
Industrial output dropped in October for a fourth consecutive month, suggesting that the South Korean economy may be experiencing a slowdown. Data from Statistics Korea shows the index for the country's industrial output stood at 115.4 last month. That's down 1.5% compared to September, the biggest on-month fall since April 2020, when the economic impact of the pandemic was in full swing. The agency attributed the drop to lower production in the services and manufacturing sectors, particularly in cars and semiconductor machinery.
As uncertainties in the semiconductor industry grow, investment in facilities is shrinking. Orders for semiconductor equipment has reduced, which has led to less production.
The production in mining and manufacturing industries shrunk by a combined 3.5% on-month in October amid exports, South Korean economy's major driver, contracting for the first time in 2 years. The agency said the country's exports and the manufacturing industry is likely to continue slowing down in the coming months.
China continuing with its strong quarantine measures, the prolonged war in Ukraine and tightening monetary policies worldwide are the factors that could lead to a drop in South Korea's manufacturing and exports.
Not only manufacturing, but production in the service industry has also gone down by 0.8%, the biggest drop since December 2020. Retail sales, a barometer for consumer demand, also edged down 0.2% on month, falling for the second month in a row, mainly due to clothing seeing a drop due to relatively warm weather in October. The agency said retail sales are likely to contract further in November due to the effect of crowd crush in Itaewon during Halloween. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Growing awareness of environmental issues is leading to more conscious modes of consumption. This includes food upcycling, value-added products made using ingredients that people otherwise would not consume. Shin Se-byuk zooms in on this phenomenon.
This is a display with tomato sauce and pickled radishes. Seemingly ordinary, but these products are made using upcycled ingredients. Imperfect-looking fruit and vegetables, yet perfectly fine in terms of nutrition and taste. They are the main ingredients. These food items are the result of a search for more sustainable ways to consume food using food.
I wanted to reduce food waste in the beginning. I thought I could use some rejected farm products to cook some dishes and foods. They may look imperfect, but they are as good as or even better than other better-looking farm fruit and vegetables.
Food upcycling, that's basically repurposing foods, is gaining popularity in parallel with growing consumer demand for environmental sustainability. Ingredients that would have otherwise been wasted are turned into a variety of value-added products. In fact, as of this year, food upcycling has become a $53 billion market globally. And by 2032, it is projected to grow to be worth over $83 billion. Byproducts from food manufacturing are also considered valuable resources.
This fine powder is made from the byproducts of beer. The discarded grain from breweries is given a second chance to be consumed as an alternative flour.
After undergoing several steps from cleansing and dehydration to milling, brewery waste gets reborn as this fine powder called Renergy flour. From energy bars to protein drinks, this sustainable flour can make a multitude of different products. While this flour is as nutritious as white all-purpose flour, the company explains that this also serves environmental interests.
So 1 kilogram of Renergy flour actually saves about 11 kilograms of carbon, as well as 3.7 tons of water. So if you, just to summarize, in comparison to the white flour, it has a higher nutritional value and also provides a very measurable eco-friendly impact.
From meat alternative made of rice and soy byproducts to beer made from ugly fruits, food upcycling is paving the way for future food sustainability. 신새벽, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to a different story now, Kukkiwon works to spread Korea's national sport and martial art of Taekwondo across the world. On Wednesday, the organization celebrated its 50th anniversary. Lee Shu sheds light on some of the standout accomplishments.
Welcome to Kukkiwon, where Taekwondo artists fly through the air and break stones with bare but iron fists.
It was in 1972 that Kukkiwon, also known as the World Taekwondo Headquarters, was founded in South Korea to globalize the martial art of Taekwondo.
And on Wednesday, Kukkiwon celebrated the 50th anniversary of its founding. It invited and introduced its dispatch masters, the Taekwondo masters dispatched by the organization, who are working to educate and spread the spirit of Taekwondo in 54 countries around the world. Foreign ambassadors to South Korea also joined and delivered congratulatory speeches. Around 40 foreign ambassadors were given an honorary Taekwondo Dan, or degrees of belts. The dispatch masters helped the ambassadors put on their dobok, or Taekwondo wear.
I've spent 25 years or half my life in Sri Lanka pioneering Taekwondo training in the country. We are doing our best and pouring our hearts out and will continue to work hard.
Taekwondo is first a marvelous martial art. It's full of values of courage, tenacity, precision, respect.
The organization has been backed by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism since its founding and has worked to make Taekwondo an official Olympic sport and also the national sport of South Korea designated by law. It also hosted the first ever World Taekwondo Championships that continues to this day and unified the sports promotion test and training system.
For half a century, Taekwondo, our national sport, has spread to the world. There are Taekwondo associations in 212 countries around the world, and 203 countries are receiving Kukkiwon's Dan certificates. This, I think, is a great cultural heritage.
Kukkiwon will continue to foster Taekwondo talent around the world by improving its education system. It will also work to develop tour programs as well as broadcast content that incorporates Taekwondo. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
A powerful cold wave is sweeping across South Korea, unleashing strong winds and subjecting the nation to minus temperatures. Cold wave alerts are still in place for most parts of the country. Northern central regions have cold wave warnings in place. The rest of the nation, including Seoul, have advisories issued. This cold wave will reach its peak tomorrow, which means readings will plummet even further. Morning conditions will be especially cold in Seoul tomorrow at -9 degrees Celsius, so make sure to bundle up extra warm. Snowfall will continue for western regions. Parts of Jeollanam-do and Chungcheongnam-do provinces will see 1 to 3 centimeters. Heavier snowfall is in store for eastern Jeollabuk-do province and mountainous regions of Jeju Island, with up to 7 centimeters in the forecast. Inland regions will see morning lows in minus figures. Chungcheon will be especially cold at -12 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul will get up to -1 degree. Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping at 4 degrees Celsius. Although this cold wave is set to ease off this weekend, conditions will stay frigid with temperatures below the seasonal norms. That's all for now, and to the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.